What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas, your host as always, bringing you another edition of the Thomas Take, and I got a big show in store for you all today. Thank you for joining me live, getting off to a little bit of an early start on today's show. Had some other arrangements for tonight that I needed to get off to an early start with this show. Originally, I was planning on going on at 7, but I'm feeling pretty confident about the content that I have prepared for you all today. And for those of you that don't know, today is a special edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, as it is the Thomas Double Take, as today I will be doing a brand new show, and obviously tomorrow I will be doing a brand new show, where usually I space things out a little bit more, but it's been a little bit since I have been on the mic and given my take on the latest sports topics around the wide world of sports, and I am excited, very excited. So if you have not checked out my topics of discussion, the lineup, obviously, part 1, the life and death of a near and dear singer, songwriter, artist, music legend, is where I wanted to start off with today's show. Now, obviously, this is a sports show. This is a show where I talk about a lot of different sports topics and my take on plenty different sports, hot button sports issues and things like that. But I felt like I needed to start off today's show by talking about the passing of my favorite singer, probably of all time. Definitely one of the greatest voices in rock history. Definitely the greatest voice in the grunge genre, the grunge era, if that's what we can call it. Chris Cornell, the lead singer of Soundgarden, the lead singer of Audioslave, and the one-and-done singer for Temple of the Dog. They released one album, Chris Cornell and Eddie Vedder, back in the early 90s, in which Temple of the Dog released an album in honor of Mother Love Bone singer Andrew Wood. And I really wanted to talk about this because I felt like it deserved to be talked about. Chris Cornell and Soundgarden announced recently that they were going to do a tour, a North American tour, and the last performance was Soundgarden at the Fox Theater in Detroit, Michigan, and that was the last night, the last performance, the last night that Chris Cornell was alive. Reports state that Chris Cornell committed suicide. And it was basically, he hung himself. This is always a real touchy topic because suicide is something that it is very haunting, something that has definitely touched the lives of so many people. And when we hear of a situation like this, where Chris Cornell, a famous, good-looking, handsome guy that's in his 50s, that has it all, has all the money, has had all the success that you could ever dream, you'd ever dream for, that you would ever want, the most success that you would ever want to have. Chris Cornell had that. So the original thought in the mind of a fan is, why would Chris Cornell come to this decision? There really is no why. There's never a why. It's usually a period of issues over a long period of time that lead to that moment, that end with that moment. And it's a disturbing thing to talk about because most people have experienced loss through suicide. And with Chris Cornell being the matriarch of grunge, being basically the Robert Plant of the grunge era, Robert Plant, the singer for Led Zeppelin, Chris Cornell meant everything to my generation of the young, 25 to 35-year-old people that were around when Soundgarden really reached its peak, when Audioslave really reached its peak. And Chris Cornell was that guy for me growing up, that I listened to Soundgarden. They were a really popular band. They were disbanded, and then he joined Audioslave, where they formed, basically, it was a super group with Rage Against the Machine and Soundgarden, being that Chris Cornell was the only member of Soundgarden that joined Audioslave. So this was a guy that was a real star, and he's a huge loss for me as a music fan. He's a huge loss for a lot of people as a music fan. And I can honestly say that Chris Cornell got me through some really tough times. There were times where I was going through stuff, whether it be family or work or, just anything. If you're just having a bad day, and I would hear a Soundgarden song, or I would hear Be Yourself, or Outshined, or Spoon Man, just all the songs that he had written that were such powerful songs that would really practically change my mood instantaneously. I'll never forget it. And this is a real tough loss. It's been a tough loss for me, to be honest, because I didn't think that this would ever happen. Obviously, it's a huge shock, and it's a huge shock around the whole entire music world. And to know that there's been 5 major bands that contributed to the grunge era: Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains, and I'm forgetting another one. And Nirvana, and then also Pearl Jam. Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains, Lane Staley passed away of a heroin overdose. Kurt Cobain obviously passed away from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Chris Cornell, suicide. And then you have the overdose of Scott Weiland, from the lead singer of Stone Temple Pilots. So the only member of the Fab Five, so to speak, of grunge that is a lead singer that is still alive, of those 5 Seattle, influential based bands, is Eddie Vedder. So obviously I'm a Pearl Jam fan of the music scene that I listen to: Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Audioslave, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots, Audioslave, Eddie Vedder solo, and obviously that submerged into like Red Hot Chili Peppers, and then kind of, for me, just my chronological order of how I got into music was in that era. And obviously I'm a big 80s hair metal, fan, and it really sucked. It really sucked to hear that news, to hear that this man was struggling, despite all the success that he had, despite all the fans that adored him, that loved him. He performed that last show in Detroit, Michigan at the Fox Theater, and we'll never know if he thought about this going into the show, or if this was a thought that, was a spur-of-the-moment thought. Reports are now stating from Mrs. Cornell, his wife, that he had overdosed on his anxiety medication, and it had caused him suicidal thoughts that led to his acts of committing suicide. We'll never know what is true. We'll never know if that was the actual case until the toxicology reports are released. But this was a man that obviously was struggling with some sort of addiction demons, social anxiety demons, and I really feel for him. I feel very, very sad for Chris Cornell, for his family. And I just wanted to start off the show basically by saying thank you to Chris Cornell for basically being an inspiration for millions of people, being a voice that people could hear that would get them through tough times. His words, his lyrics would strike a chord with people, and they strike a chord even more so now, given the fact that he is now passed on. So definitely a big hero of mine in terms of the music scene that he brought to the table. And I've talked a lot about music on this show lately, and man, really, really, really upsetting news to hear that Chris Cornell had committed suicide and died at the age of 52 a few days ago. So wanted to start off the show with that. Be yourself is all that you can be. That was the message that Chris Cornell told to so many people. Like a Stone, Spoon Man, Burden in My Hand, just so many amazing songs that he wrote. Obviously, Black Hole Sun was the one that really put him over the top. And a guy that sold over, 20, he was responsible for over 20 million records sold in the United States alone. So, he was a real success story, one of the rarest voices in the music scene that there has ever been. And reports, do not have any information as far as whether or not Soundgarden will continue. I don't see how they even could, just based on the fact that Chris Cornell was the band. He was the band. There was no, each band that Chris Cornell was a part of, it was him. People tuned in to hear his voice. That raunchy voice on songs like Outshined, Show Me How to Live with Audioslave, Outshine with Soundgarden. Pretty Noose was a huge song of his, and just all the songs that I listened to and hearing his death afterwards, the lyrics were dark. The music was dark. It was heavy. It was music that hit you hard, and you almost wonder if that was how he was actually feeling. And I really hope that we can all learn a lesson from this, that as fans, it's never always okay for these people, the people of fame. Their lives are not perfect just because they have money, just because they have the nice shiny car, just because they have the beautiful wife, the beautiful house. It's not always perfect, and nobody is perfect. And for anybody I've seen things in support of Chris Cornell, as there should be, and people wonder how fans get so emotional over the loss of an artist. Artists touch us in a way that is very unique. You could go to work and have a bad day, and you could listen to the right song when you get home, and that song could change your whole outlook on not just your day, but on your entire life moving forward. And you can always hear that song at a later moment and think back to the memory of that previous moment where you heard that song and say to yourself, wow, that song really grabbed me. It brought me in. And Chris Cornell did that for me on so many occasions. Rest in peace to a singing icon, a rock and roll icon, a grunge icon, a legend of music. Chris Cornell, gone far too soon at the age of 52. We'll be right back on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast.